It was a quiet morning in Maplewood, the kind where the sun painted soft golden hues across the rooftops, and the world seemed to wake up in slow motion. Birds chirped lazily, the air smelled of fresh dew, and the occasional rustling of leaves filled the silence. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. A sudden sound broke the stillness. The back door of a small blue house burst open, and a young girl, no older than 9, sprinted out, her small feet barely making a sound against the pavement. She was wearing a faded pink dress, the hem frayed from years of wear, and her light brown hair flew behind her like a tangled ribbon. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she made no sound, no sobs, no wails, just silent, desperate crying, the kind that made her chest heave, as if she were running out of air. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. She only had one goal: reach him. Down the street, a large green garbage truck rumbled to a stop. The garbage man, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, named Tom, stepped off with practiced ease. His work boots crunched against the gravel as he grabbed a bin and heaved it into the truck. It was a routine job, the kind that left little room for surprises. But today was different, because as soon as he turned around, he saw her. The little girl ran straight to him, her small hands grabbing at his rough, gloved ones. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, and she looked up at him with eyes filled with something he hadn't seen in a long time. Pure, unfiltered fear. "Please," she choked out. Her voice was small, but the urgency in it was enormous. "Help me!" Tom's heart clenched. Hey, slow down, sweetheart," he said, kneeling to her level. "What's wrong?" She shook her head wildly, glancing back at the house she had just fled from. Her whole body trembled. Tom followed her gaze, his brows drawing together. The house looked ordinary, calm even, but something about the way she was acting sent a chill up his spine. "I need to call someone," she whispered. "Please." Tom had been in a lot of tough situations before. Floods, blizzards, even a car accident once, but nothing compared to the sheer terror on this girl's face. He reached into his pocket for his phone, ready to dial 911, when suddenly, bang! A loud noise echoed from the direction of the house. It wasn't a gunshot, but it was something heavy, something that made Tom's instincts scream, that something was very, very wrong. The little girl let out a small gasp and gripped his arm tighter. Tom didn't hesitate. He pulled her behind him protectively, his body shielding her small frame as he raised his phone to his ear. "One, what's your emergency?" Before Tom could even speak, another sound cut through the morning air. A voice. A deep, angry voice coming from the house. "Where are you?" Tom's blood turned ice cold. The garbage truck, the quiet street, the sleepy neighborhood. It all suddenly felt too still, too fragile. The girl pressed her face into his arm, her whole body shaking. "Please," she whispered again. Tom took a step back, gripping the phone tighter. "Yeah," he said into the receiver, his voice steady but urgent. "We need police. Now." He didn't know what was happening. He didn't know who the girl was running from. But he knew one thing. She was terrified, and whatever was inside that house was coming for her. Tom's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he kept his arm protectively around the trembling girl. The 911 operator was still on the line, her voice calm but urgent. "Sir, can you tell me what's happening?" Tom's eyes stayed locked on the house. The front door hadn't opened yet, but he could feel something shifting in the air, like the storm before a downpour. "There's a little girl here," he said, keeping his voice low. "She ran out of that house crying, saying she needed help, and now someone inside is looking for her. Stay with her," the operator instructed. "Help is on the way." Tom swallowed hard. He could tell the girl wanted to run even farther, but her small hands clung tightly to his arm, like he was the only thing keeping her grounded. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice gentler now. She hesitated before whispering, "Lily." A simple name, an innocent one. And yet, something about it felt so heavy in the moment, like it carried a story she wasn't ready to tell. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from inside the house, and Tom instinctively stepped backward, pulling Lily with him. Then, the door flew open. A tall man, dressed in wrinkled jeans and a stained grey t-shirt, stood in the doorway. His face was shadowed under the porch roof, but Tom could see enough. Wild eyes, clenched fists, and a kind of anger that didn't belong in a quiet neighborhood like this. "There you are," the man growled, his eyes locking onto Lily. Tom felt her grip tighten painfully around his arm. Something was very wrong. The man stepped forward, his movements stiff but forceful. "She's my daughter," he said, voice rough. "She ran off. Bring her back here." Lily flinched at his words, pressing closer to Tom. That reaction alone told him everything he needed to know. Tom took a steady breath, planting his feet firmly. "She says she needs help. She's a kid," the man snapped. "She don't know what she's saying." His hands twitched at his sides, his whole body rigid with frustration. Tom didn't budge. He wasn't a cop, wasn't a hero, just a man who collected trash for a living. But he knew how to read people, and every fiber of his being told him that Lily should not go back inside that house. "She's staying with me," Tom said firmly. The man's nostrils flared. His gaze flicked to Tom's phone, still clutched in his hand. "You call the cops?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. Before Tom could answer, a sound in the distance made them both pause. Sirens. Lily gasped softly, as if she hadn't truly believed help was coming until now. The man took a step back, his eyes darting toward the street, his whole body tense like an animal caught in a trap. Then, without another word, he turned and bolted back into the house, slamming the door shut behind him. Tom exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Lily," he said softly, crouching in front of her. "Who was that?" She swallowed hard, wiping at her tear-streaked cheeks. "My uncle," she murmured. Tom frowned. "Not your dad?" She shook her head quickly. "No, my parents. They're gone." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she blinked rapidly, like she was trying not to cry again. Tom's stomach twisted. He didn't push her for more. The sirens were getting closer, and all that mattered now was keeping her safe. Within seconds, 2 police cars screeched to a stop in the middle of the street, their lights flashing red and blue against the houses. Lily shuddered. "It's okay," Tom reassured her. "They're here to help." But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine, because something told him this was only the beginning. The flashing red and blue lights painted the quiet street in restless motion as the police officers stepped out of their cars. Tom stayed close to Lily, his protective grip on her shoulder, firm but reassuring. She hadn't spoken another word since the officers arrived, and he could feel how tightly wound she was, as if the wrong move might shatter her completely. A tall officer with short dark hair approached them first, his expression calm but serious. "Sir, you were the one who called?" Tom nodded. "Yeah. This little girl ran to me, said she needed help. She's terrified of whoever's inside that house." He glanced down at Lily, her small fingers still clenched around the fabric of his sleeve. "She says he's her uncle." The officer's gaze softened just a little as he crouched down to Lily's level. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said gently. "My name's Officer Ramirez. Can you tell me what happened? Lily hesitated, her lips parting as if she wanted to speak. But then she squeezed her eyes shut. A deep tremble ran through her body, and Tom could tell she was still too afraid. She's been through a lot, Tom said, answering for her. That man, her uncle, came out here demanding I give her back. But something's not right. Ramirez exchanged a glance with the other officer. Before nodding, he signaled toward the house, and within seconds, 2 more officers moved toward the front door, knocking loudly. "Police!" one of them called. "Open up!" Silence. Then, after a few long seconds, the door creaked open just a sliver. The man from before, the one who had come looking for Lily, peeked through, his face shadowed. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice tight. "We received a call about a child in distress," one officer said. "We need to ask you a few questions." The man hesitated. His hand, gripping the door frame, twitched slightly. "There's no problem here," he said quickly. "She's my niece. She gets emotional sometimes." Ramirez glanced back at Lily, watching her reaction carefully. She was staring at the door, her whole body frozen. "She seemed pretty desperate when she ran out of here," Tom said, his voice firm. The man let out a forced chuckle. "Kids, you know," he said. "They get upset, they run, but she belongs here. I take care of her." A pause. Then, Lily's voice, small but clear. "No, you don't." Every officer turned to her. Tom felt the weight of the moment settle around them like heavy fog. Lily took a shaky breath, then looked up at Ramirez, her eyes pleading. "He's lying," she whispered. "He's not taking care of me. Her breath hitched, and she seemed to shrink into herself. "I don't want to go back." That was all the officers needed to hear. "Sir, step outside," one officer ordered. The man's face hardened. "You can't just—" "Now." For a moment, it looked like he might resist, but then he stepped onto the porch, lifting his hands slightly in mock surrender. As the officers began questioning him, Ramirez knelt beside Lily again. "You're very brave," he told her. "We're going to make sure you're safe, okay?" Lily nodded slowly, but her eyes flickered toward the house. Her expression filled with something deeper than fear. Relief. Tom let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It wasn't long before the situation escalated. After searching the house, the officers found enough to confirm that Lily's fear had been justified, though they didn't share the full details. Tom could tell by the way they cuffed the man and led him toward the patrol car that whatever had been happening inside that house, it was bad. As the officers secured the scene, Ramirez turned back to Lily. "Do you have any other family?" he asked gently. "Someone we can call?" Lily hesitated, then slowly shook her head. "No, it was just my parents before." Her voice trailed off, but she didn't need to finish the sentence. Ramirez gave her a sympathetic nod. "We'll find someone who can take care of you," he promised. Lily looked up at Tom then, her small fingers still curled around his sleeve. Tom felt something deep in his chest shift. He'd spent his whole life cleaning up after people, hauling away what they didn't want, what they left behind. But standing there, looking at this little girl who had run to him for help, he realized some things aren't meant to be thrown away. "Hey," he said, kneeling in front of her. "How about we stick together for now, just until they figure out the next step?" Lily searched his face, as if trying to decide whether he meant it. Then slowly, she nodded. For the first time that morning, Tom saw something different in her eyes. Hope. As the officers finished up, the neighborhood began to return to normal. The sun rising higher, the world moving forward. But for Lily, everything had changed, and maybe Just maybe, for Tom too,